Good morning, scholars. History today. Looks like the knights are getting ready to go into the chapel. Maybe there's a knighting ceremony going on for a new knight in the kingdom. But I did notice one thing when I saw this chapel. I noticed some stained glass. Do you see it in the windows? So don't forget your quests. If you haven't done your quests and you're out and about, look for some stained glass in a lot of the local churches. If you're walking downtown or even through your neighborhood, or even in some gift shop windows. Or maybe you're fortunate enough to have some in your house. So, stained glass and castles. There's a couple of castle-looking buildings around the county. So, I hope you're being successful on your quests. And these knights, who knows? Maybe they're going to head inside to see a new knighting ceremony or a coronation of a king. Hello, scholars. Today we're going to read The Greatest King, Charlemagne. If you would like to take out your Story of the World book, you can follow along as I play through my pictures. We're on page 110. The Greatest King, Charlemagne. Clovis, the first ruler of the Frankish Empire, was a great king. Charles Martel, known as Charles the Hammer, was an even greater king. But Charles's grandson, also named Charles, was the greatest Frankish king of all. In the Middle Ages, many people thought he was the greatest king in the whole world. He became known as Charles the Great. In Latin, Charles Magnus, or Charlemagne. Charlemagne became king in 771. He was worried about his kingdom because he was afraid that the Franks were beginning to return to their old barbarian ways. They were forgetting about Christianity. They weren't going to church or having their children baptized, and the children weren't being taught to read or write. So Charlemagne set out to make his kingdom prosperous and Christian. He paid hundreds of monks to copy out manuscripts of the scriptures. He built new roads and bridges so that teachers and priests could travel easily through the land of the Franks. He put a famous monk named Alcuin in charge of starting schools for boys all over the kingdom, and he tried to make the Franks cleaner and more civilized. He taught them better ways to farm. He ordered them to bring their children to church, and he even scolded them for treading grapes into wine with their dirty bare feet. Ooh. I am one of Charlemagne's scholars, and he gave me the important job of copying all the old manuscripts into Latin by hand. It is really important because the manuscripts have important knowledge, and if I copy them, I save the knowledge. But most of all, Charlemagne fought wars. He spent 30 years fighting wars to make his kingdom bigger. He led his soldiers into battle himself, brandishing his great golden sword, Joyeuse, over his head. And when he won, he was ruthless. He forced the prisoners to be baptized as Christians or die. And that was common in those days for the rulers. If you overtook a people, you forced them to take on your way, or you would be executed. Charlemagne's kingdom grew and grew. He fixed up the old crumbling Roman roads so they ran all through his new empire. He ordered new bridges and churches built, and he told his builders to copy the Roman arches and columns in his new buildings. By the time Charlemagne was as old as your grandfather, he ruled over an empire that contained Roman buildings, Roman roads, and almost half of the land that used to belong to Rome. In December of the year 800, when he was almost 60, Charles traveled to Rome to visit the Pope. On Christmas morning, he put on the clothes that a wealthy Roman man would wear, and he went to church of St. Peter for the Christmas service. He knelt down in front of the altar to pray. Suddenly, the Pope took out a golden crown covered with glittering jewels and placed it on Charlemagne's head. "You are the great and peace-bringing emperor of the Romans," he declared. And the whole congregation shouted out, "Hail to Charles, crowned by God, the great and peace-bringing emperor of the Romans." Of course, the Roman Empire had fallen apart long ago, but people still remembered that the Roman emperors had made the ancient world safe for a little while. They remembered that Rome had been a rich, comfortable empire. They remembered the Pax Romana, the peace that the Roman rulers kept through all their territory, and they hoped that Charlemagne would bring the same peace and wealth to the medieval world. Charlemagne was a great ruler, but his empire was never as powerful as the ancient empire of Rome. And although he wanted to be as educated and civilized as Julius Caesar and the other emperors of Rome, Charlemagne had never been taught how to read and write properly. He hired teachers to show him how to make his letters. Until he was an old man, he kept a writing tablet under his pillow. Whenever he woke up at night, he would sit up in bed and practice making letters on his tablet. But he never really learned to read or write. Charlemagne could not himself read or write. He did not want this to happen to other people, so he built schools and churches so his subjects could learn proper education. The peasants did learn, and the entire northern Europe began to improve. As a matter of fact, you probably write better than Charlemagne, Charles the Great, the Roman emperor of the Middle Ages. And we'll end with a picture of Charlemagne visiting one of the schools he started in his empire. Until next time, go out and do great works.